Hey everybody, this is Pete Apple. I am an engineer within our IT organization, and I'm here to introduce Heather Pfluger, who is a leader within our IT org, helping our own internal customers migrate into the cloud. Heather?
Hi, everybody. My name's Heather Pfluger. I'm a senior leader in Microsoft IT. My previous role was helping manage the change management between infrastructure and engineering teams as we performed our migration to the cloud. Now I've moved on to focus on DevOps, infrastructure, and how we connect the company. Just like everybody else, we're navigating a really challenging market right now. So, whether it's challenges with the supply chain, whether it's the continuous security threats, we're still trying to figure out exactly how hybrid work is going to go in the future. So, constantly we're asked to do more with less. And that's where Azure has been a huge benefit for us. And that means rethinking IT and business operations and driving innovation and productivity. And I think it's about 220,000 or more employees these days.
Yeah, and it's exciting actually to be able to talk about our own IT journey, our migration, our optimization, how we're reinvesting in the different types of solutions that are possible within the cloud compared to how we did things before, and how we continue to shift the ways that we think about the technology, but also the processes, the ways that we enable our internal customers, our employees to be successful in their day-to-day work and have less friction.
Okay, Pete, we've got a lot of great stuff to talk about. Are you ready to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Many people have a misinterpretation that when you're Microsoft IT or part of the IT organization, you get all that stuff for free, right? And that's not actually the case. We're customers of Azure too, of M365. We have many of the same business conditions around looking towards the future and looking towards at the time, what's a hybrid workforce going to be looking like, and how are they going to interact with our particular sets of services and applications. And so needing to look at that and work just as hard at being a good IT organization, but then also, being able to showcase here's how we do it, and that's how other customers can do it, is a lot of pressure, but also a lot of fun.
You remind me when I talk to customers, they're always a little bit surprised to hear that we pay the same rates for Azure that they do. We operate with the same licensing, the same pricing. And it's really, really important because it's that role we play as customer zero where we're having our experience with Azure and improving that with the project group. It was a learning experiment as we started lifting and shifting all those IaaSes and then looking at our bill every month. So a lot of learnings during that time for us that we've now been able to pass on to the product team and to our customers. And I remember when we moved to the cloud, now that we're operating in the cloud, we have such the benefit of having a good, accurate inventory of all of our systems and how they interact.
Yeah, and one of the things that I helped run and continue to run is the inventory for the on-prem environments, and the understanding of who owns what applications it's associated to. We didn't always map that as well as we could. In some cases, we literally had to turn a system on and off to be able to determine, who owned it anymore and if it was still usable. There's a lot of conversations about lift and shift and taking all of the physical and virtual machines and moving them up into the cloud. And one of the things I tried to do was be very thoughtful about making sure, is this really needed? And so what I did in many cases was we did not literally move the system up and migrate it into Azure. We rebuilt a new system for the business and said, here's a new system, brand new, very clean, none of that old stuff that you had on it before that had been there for a decade. And that actually really helped us clean up a lot of our environment. As we continue to do that, as we move more and more systems up into the cloud, we're getting cleaner, and we have better, like you say, better telemetry, more consistent telemetry.
Close to 50% of our assets were deprecated when we really went in and cleaned up and inspected and moved to Azure.
When I think about the things that we had to do manually back in the day of, connecting servers to storage, it's now all infrastructure as code. I mean, it's just basically scripts that you run with Azure, and there is no hands-on, and things that used to take multiple hours now take minutes.
Remember back when we were on-prem doing it the old IT way, all of those environments we had, dev, test, pre-prod, prod, and talk about expensive. And now with the cloud, again, you mentioned we spin up and spin down those environments as needed. And there's a huge cost reduction from having those redundancy of environments.
And it's all available on their website. You just take it and modify it a little bit to fit with your particular environment. And then I'm able to replicate that over and over internally to our different business owners. And what used to take multiple weeks for them now takes a few minutes, and one of their more junior engineers is able to run it. So this has been a real benefit to a lot of the internal teams on the way that they operate. They really think of infrastructure now as something that can be built on demand, when they need it.
Yeah, Pete, that's another great example of how we do more with less. The way we manage our environments, and we're able to scale up and scale down and only pay for what we need versus those huge investments we had to make in physical hardware in the past. It's pretty amazing that we now live on Azure, and we've expanded tremendously our portfolio, yet we've still remained flat, if not even saving a little bit when it comes to our infrastructure spend. And that's over a 4 or 5 year period, as we've started to embrace Azure more and more.
And similarly, if I think about the data landscape, right? You remember we had hundreds of SQL servers, hundreds and hundreds of SQL servers spread around the on-prem environment. How did we think about those and migrating all of those? We looked at some of the storage that was out there on the physical hardware, and we actually did a deduplication effort. We looked at how many copies of various tables were spread out around there. We found 40 plus copies of some tables where they were just being copied daily, weekly. And so those were the ones we aimed at for moving into a data lake, moving into some sort of centralized, readable footprint in data that teams could connect to and even create an API for, so that they could interact with other SQL, but other types of data, other types of compute, to be able to use the API, pull the data they need, only the data they need, and in many cases have fresher data, more accurate, obviously, and then speedier ability to do that.
Yeah, the work we've done on the deduplication of data is really significant across our diverse landscape. But what really gets me excited is how much easier it is to meet our commitments around privacy. Remember, with all of that data all over the place, without a great data dictionary, but we got on it with our Azure journey. We've been able to deduplicate single source of truth, which means it's so much easier to manage privacy and make sure that we're doing all the right things in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can do that automatically with all the Azure tools that are available. And when we have audits and the various fun things that IT gets to worry about, the auditors have a much easier time, because all the logging, all the information is so much easier to produce and provide. I remember some of the many weeks that some of that took before, and now it can happen in a day, where we can get the right information, provide that to them. And when we first discovered Azure Functions, which basically, if it's not doing anything, it's free. It doesn't actually charge you until something runs within the Azure function, which was a revelation. And there's a great amount of tools that are available that can help us migrate the data, understand the data, create the right kind of data lakes. And we've really tried to be as efficient as possible as we do that.
Yeah, it's really groundbreaking now how, when we think about moving forward with the maturity of our architecture, previously that would be a big IT project to go re-architect something. But it feels like now we just look at how Azure is bringing on more and more capabilities almost constantly. And our architecture changes are somewhat subtle just by shifting to new Azure capabilities.
In many cases, Azure has an architected framework out there, or a cloud. We take that and then just tweak it here or there for our particular set of cases or businesses, and then we look like heroes to the business because we build out this advanced architecture that's much more performant, efficient, that scales up and down. And I don't think many customers do that. I think they have to feel like they need to do all the hefty lifting themselves, or work with external folks who be able to do the architectures for them. A lot of that is out there. I mean, I look at some of that and really, really impressed with some of the things and the tools that are available for customers to just directly deploy advanced architectures that will really help their business very quickly, and then stay efficient with it.
Well, there's nothing I like better than being seen as a hero by our customers. So let's keep that one up.
Yeah, there's always that, thought about, oh, is it going to be the same? Is it going to be different from a technical point of view? But how are we going to run moving from a CapEx type environment to an OpEx type environment? And I remember one of the lucky opportunities that you were given at an early point of this was to try and make sure everyone was staying as efficient as possible and being able to, optimize. And I think a lot of it was just understanding the data and that telemetry that we were getting from Azure of here's your systems, here's your networking, here's your storage, here's the run rates for it, and how do you be as efficient as possible with it? How do you make sure you're looking at the data?
Yeah, that data is so powerful. I just had a very challenging experience as we were looking to trim as much as we possibly can out of our budgets heading into the next 6 to 12 months. And the first place we went was to Azure and think about optimization opportunities and cost management opportunities. And all of the data was there. The data around usage, so we could really understand how the tools were being used for the opportunity to optimize, as well as we were proactively told, changes we could make in our Azure architecture so that we could save money. And we trimmed a tremendous amount of money in a very quick time out of our budget.
Azure budgeting tools are awesome and are really helpful in showing you what your run rate is and where you're going to end by the end of the quarter or the end of the semester. And it was really just building the rigor around the cost optimization, making sure that the right people had that data in front of them and were taking action.
A lot of folks don't even know that these tools are available, that they just come as part of Azure. So what we haven't spent a lot of time on yet, Pete, is really talking about building rigor around Azure optimization. So how do you see that as really becoming something real?
One of the things that I know that you tried to lead and that I continue to try and get on my soapbox about is just having the right kind of processes of looking at the cost optimization opportunities. You have to think about this in the new world of the cloud, is being able to look at the different resources that you have moved into the cloud or built out into the cloud. What's the data and telemetry available, and how can you get as ruthlessly efficient as possible in order to do the right things with the resources you have available? When we had the on-prem environment, that physical footprint was already bought. I mean, there is no turning it off or making it disappear. It's there, it's depreciating, that's coming every month. With Azure, we can look at projects and say, you know what, we're gonna wait 6 months to do this project. It just makes sense. Shut it all down. We'll come back next year, and we're able to do that with Azure because we've got the rigor around understanding who's using what it's costing, what are the types of things that we could shut down.
And honestly, it's not just rigor about cost, it's also rigor about security, compliance, accessibility is a huge part of our priorities now as a company. If you think back, we used to have these operational reviews where we'd go look at how all of the hardware was running. And then separate from that, engineers would have their code reviews and talk about line of code and things like that. But we've brought it together now into more of a service review where we're thinking about the end experience customers have with that service.
If you build it in with code, then it's built the right way every time, the right size, the right kind of kind of environments, and then we're able to look at it from a fundamentals point of view. And my favorite thing that we do, that I know that you helped champion, is the concept around the live site, which is Monday morning, at least for my team, Monday morning, 8 a.m. We get on with the team, we're taking a look at the dashboards, we're looking at the cloud, how is everything running, what bugs have shown up, what incidents have occurred, what optimizations do we need to do, what security compliance things do we need to fix up, and that immediately goes to the sprint teams and the various teams to take action on for that week. that they put into their backlog of these are the things we have to worry about because we have the right data and telemetry from Azure to take action on it.
All right, Pete, now you're getting to the stuff that's really, really dear to my heart, the engineering fundamentals work. So, in old IT, a lot of this, what we couldn't even imagine doing a lot of these things. And it ties into what we talked about, inventory, having a single cloud solution that we run all of our services on, because then you can actually pick some things to standardize on. So that means you can actually shift left and do scanning to make sure there's no secrets in code. So you can't even finish, get through a build and release pipeline if you have a secret in code. And now we run at 0 secrets in code across our entire code base. And again, if we think back to the old way of doing IT, that would have been unimaginable.
One of the things that we really did need to understand was the ways that our operations was shifting to more and more automation, and our ability to take advantage of that in both environments, right? I really did take a hard look at our on-premises as we move more to the cloud and understand the toolings and just the philosophy in some cases about how that's managed, the ability to funnel things into telemetry that would take advantage of tooling that was available, and how to shift some of that philosophy and tooling into our on-premises, hybrid environment, using Arc and the various tools that are available now to manage both your on-prem and your cloud using the same set of tools, processes, automation, machine learning is pretty handy because it really has helped us become more efficient, faster response times, time to mitigate, as we like to say, TTM, how fast have you recovered from whatever was, failed over to another site as necessary. All of that's improved in both environments now because we're able to leverage the tooling, but then also just the point of view of let's recover as fast as possible using automation, data, the right kinds of environments. When I look now, the whole concept that we didn't have before of the hot path for alerts, and then the warm path for telemetry about what's the trends and how that happened really came from our move to the cloud and our thinking about some of that amount of data that we were getting and how best to maximize the benefit of it.
There's been several attempts to try to create a unified telemetry system where we can get consistent signals from all of our services. And one of the things Azure did is allow us just to create a common schema of the base data we needed for our telemetry, and then everybody just uses that as they build their services. So I think you're familiar with that and some of the benefits we've reaped.
Yeah, one of the great things when we think about unified telemetry or having a common telemetry platform and the ways that we have common security models now, because we have the one cloud, we have the one set of tooling, the concepts around App Insights, Azure Monitor, now Sentinel, which has been fantastic with log analytics and collecting all of the security telemetry into one location. I remember, with the on-prem environment, I have 4 or 5 different things, tooling and various types of logging, and how do you put it all together, and how do you do, not just, SOC, right? What's the security operations and how are they reacting to things, but then how are they also looking at root cause or some sort of audit type of situation. Sentinel has really helped us unify all of that and unify it not just at the infrastructure level, but all the way up the stack, right? We have conversations now with the application teams, with the infrastructure teams, with the middleware, where all of the security type of information is going to that common Sentinel platform. It makes it much easier to understand what types of events are occurring, what types of performance or types of interactions might have happened. Similarly, when you talk about the unified telemetry for performance, our ability in previous years to understand where in the stack the bottleneck or problem was occurring was commonly a lot of pointing fingers, right, at times when you talk about the on-premises world. And now with a common platform, we're able to see where the bottleneck or where the particular issue is occurring. In some cases, have that team take some sort of proactive work, or in some cases just recover it automatically. because we've looked at it or seen it enough times where it feeds into the data model of, oh, we know what that is, we know how to scale that or reboot it or whatever needs to occur, or it just dynamically happens these days. And because of that common telemetry system that we have built on Azure, it's amazing the amount of efficiency that we've been able to do with the ways that we can operate better.
I know you also have been part of some really cool projects using microservices, Kubernetes, Azure Functions, Azure App Services. So why don't you brag a little bit about that, Pete?
Okay, I can brag a little bit. I think it's really interesting when we went through the process, and this is where I get passionate because one of the things that I was really excited about was looking at this Azure footprint. As we moved more and more systems into virtual machines into Azure, we continue to relook at the footprint. We've started to come back and revisit many of those virtual machines and many of the different types of compute and storage that we have leveraged when we think about those models. And how can we shift to microservices? How can we look at Azure Functions, Kubernetes, different types of things? I mean, it really is getting away from the legacy ways we think about compute, storage, and the interactions. Those microservices architectures are infinitely better able to scale, restart, handle the right kinds of operations. If one of the little widgets dies, it just restarts itself. You don't have to go and reboot the VM because it's hung up. It literally, in some ways, helps manage itself. So it's a transition to get to those, but once you do, it's pretty amazing.
When I talk to leaders, I tell them, it's time to move IT out of the basement. It's amazing how relevant IT is today because everybody's thinking about their digital transformation one way or the other. And there's constant change in the world, in the industry. And being able to be agile and having a product like Azure and a company like Microsoft behind you, it's really going to help companies be successful.
Love coming into the job now because what's the next thing? What's the next set of interesting Azure tooling or M365 resources that we can get to play with day to day? IT is a lot more fun than it used to be.
No matter where you are in your journey, whether you're migrating, optimizing, reinvesting, there's so many different ways that you can do more with less by leveraging the Azure product suite.